Start with a love poem, and it's in this book, DOS, but my proudest publication actually was a recent online publication where the poem I'm going to read was translated into Arabic and published in a newspaper in Iraq, and I really was never so thrilled. The poem was translated by a novelist named Mahmoud Saeed, S-A-E-E-D, a native of Mosul. And I met Mahmoud at a place called the McDowell Colony where people go to work. Artists, photographers, radio heads, architects, composers, writers, all working. Mahmoud had been told about it by a young woman who he was teaching Arabic. He had never heard of it. She said, "You ought to apply." And he said, "Well, whatever." And then he got in and he didn't really understand it was a big deal, and they kept calling him, "Are you coming? Are you coming?" He's like, "Who are these people? I don't know." But he went and had a really great time and planted himself in the library so he wouldn't miss anything. He never worked in his studio. He always worked in the library. He didn't want to miss anything that was happening. A wonderful, wonderful man, over 70. And he translated work by all the poets who came through McDowell while he was there. The main requirement for him was that the poems were love poems. He said, "Enough blood, only love poems," for the people of Iraq. We spoke about the translation. This poem is called Epiphany, and it was supposed to be kind of ironic in an English way, kind of an awakening. However, Epiphany, when you're translating in Arabic, sounds religious. Awakening sounds political. So we had to discuss this. And the poem ended up being titled Song of Love. He said, "Is that okay?" Fine. Then he said, "What if I add a bird? It would make it more understandable." And you know how picky we are, poets, about words. But I said, "Fine." Put the bird in. So the bird's in there. And later I had the pleasure of some students of mine being able to read it to me in Arabic, which was just such a deep pleasure. But I just want to thank Mahmoud, and I tried to find someone who could read the poem in Arabic. I found several people, but they're not here right now, unfortunately. However, one person I asked was in Greece at the moment, hanging out with a Syrian fellow. She gave the poem to him. He read it to her so she could hear it, and then he liked it so much he posted it on Facebook. So that was my second most thrilling publication ever. That it was posted by someone I don't know in Greece from Syria. That's pretty cool. So before I read my poem, I just want to read you a little bit from the preface of Mahmoud's novel called The World Through the Eyes of Angels, so you have more of a feeling about him. This is the story of a child in the 40s and 50s of the last century. It is the story of a people in a remote city very far from America, a story of ordinary people in one of the oldest cities in the world, Mosul. When I cast my mind back now to remember how people lived at that time and compare it to their life now, I am swept up in a whirlwind of sadness and pain. Then people lived as brothers in total harmony, as if they were one family that included Muslim, Jews, and Christians. Because the city sprawls among fields and an endless plain, it was filled in the summer with Kurdish, Jewish, Turkmen, Aramaic, Yazidi, Shabak, and Armenian peasants. Last year I went to Tijuana, Mexico. My heart was heavy with the griefs and catastrophes and battles and divisions and tragedies of my country, where everyone is at war with everyone else, and the country is a sea of blood in which all are drowning. Since the invasion of Iraq, my mind has gone into hibernation. I had not been able to find the concentration to write a single word, and I realized that the road I was on led only to death. And then there in Tijuana, I saw things that reminded me of Mosul in the summer. Brotherhood, crowds, gaiety, and people staying up late at night. Music in the public square, songs, food, pushcarts in the street, complete harmony and boisterous life, like the country, like the life of my country. I saw a child about 5 running barefoot, carrying a bag of onions, tomatoes, oranges, I'm not sure. At that same age, I was barefoot like him, running almost a kilometer to get to my father's shop before he had to leave for afternoon prayer. Then I would go back home when he returned. It made me happy, even though I got no reward of any kind. This novel tells the story of a boy. That boy lived in miserable poverty, and it cannot be said that he enjoyed his childhood. He worked all day, but he did not feel that he was miserable. Society at that time was much more diverse, agreeable, compassionate, and harmonious. At my advanced age of 67, I have only begun to discover the extent of the change, the destruction, and the ruin that have overtaken my country. Now, no one, child or adult, can go even a quarter of a kilometer down the street. But that Mexican boy reminded me of my childhood and opened a door for me. I began to write the book in Mexico and finished writing it in Chicago to serve as a living witness to a people fated to walk in bitter darkness. So thank you, Mahmoud. And I think we all need to be able to recite one poem at this time by next year in a different language. Is that a deal? Okay. Whatever it is. Epiphany, for Electa on January 6th. Blue bowl and the coming light, high maples glow red-tipped at dawn, full gesture of blood returning to limbs, the threat of a surprising golden wind. I am the coming bright side of the triangle, hold myself folded against my ribs, hands uneasily preparing for all the feelings to resurface on my skin. Tight gray bark awash, dark stain of sudden thaw, all I need exposed in winter light. The new old roots that deepen as love calls up, urgente, and the entire body answers until all movement is built on fierce joy and alarming patience. Lips daily grazing the tenderness that surrounds me, this that has become what I cannot do without. It is asked of me again, even as winter is upon us, and it cannot be stopped, this asking of the body to trust, to carry the change to every outer reach until present touch touches present. This is a piece that's I've been revising all week that came out of one place and ended up in another. Inside the seismograph again. Begun in the waves out from the fall of the towers. The fire burned for months, melted steel along wick, ignited deep into the ground. How could a sky empty of clouds be empty? And how could anyone think of themselves alone now? Daily news, a thick shield in front of the eyes. Vision, no longer a mechanism, but paired like cloud cover, moving fast, returning to cloak the orb in darkness, light, to an altered vision of the whole round world. Looking downtown on Amsterdam Avenue into the black envelope of sky. Paper, record of our marked notes, post-its, files, a tide of paper rising under our feet, falling in altered combinations. What is this new language at our feet? Have we learned more? More paper than shoes, more dust than blackened bones. How to recognize what we didn't see? What haven't we recognized? Letters curling in the air, and translation, words cupped to drink from two hands held as one. Is this the utterance of our lives, a daily hand-to-mouth gesture, a cup of darkness at the lip? Walking home, a dumpster outside Osner's typewriters. 3 guys roll out a canvas-sided container filled with heavy typewriters, bulky adding machines, punch keys, red, round, white buttons, sturdy, dented bodies with black, heavy cords and fat connectors. Every word maker and number marker of my lifetime heaved into a 10 by 20 dumpster, overflowing. There will be no second dumpster. What language are the ribbons whispering in what lost tongue? The dumpster will haul away the useful tools of half a century from the back room of the typewriter repair shop. The towers in the first minutes, reduced an empire and its holding to dust. What is the shape of meaning of a footprint in the dust, the feel of the imprint, and the response of earth underfoot? The rock is the same. I lived inside a picture I could not see or read, wavering lines across the page. It was there in the waves out where I lived. I was not alone. We were together on the sea. There was a route to deliver clothes and supplies, people coming on foot across 23rd with shopping carts full of Gatorade and water, cart trunks stuffed full of socks for firemen, feet sodden, struggling to put out the fire. I headed downtown, bus alive with talk, everyone sharing stories. I get word, no more volunteers. But I sit a while and marvel at my adopted city's people lined up to help. Suddenly I see a friend, Belle, in her wheelchair with a young friend guiding her. She works on the Penn Prison Committee, writes to inmates on death row. She tells me she can do decompression counseling. She's trained, she can listen. She's eager to tell me, someone, what she can offer. A deep flicker. September 12th is my third week working at the Women's Maximum Security Prison, teaching Baldwin and Wolfe. Inside, I pick up photo ID, get searched, hand-stamped before the tunnel of barbed wire. The gates open on one side and close behind me. I hold my hand up to the black light so it can be read. When the other side opens, I walk through a tunnel of billowing layers of razor wire. To my left, a tower with armed guards, and ahead, a low brick building skirted by newly planted cherry trees. One or two staff smoking outside. All prisons are locked down during a national security crisis. On the 12th, the prison is locked down, no visitors, no contact, no movement in or out. New York City is locked down, bridges, tunnels closed, no travel below 14th Street without ID and proof of residence. A police line cordons off 14th Street, east to west. The prison can go into lock because of something inside, something outside, or something we will never know about. Security is secret. Security stays secret. There are no reasons and no negotiation. I may hear pieces of the story later from the women, depending on how fresh the news stays within the walls. I've been told to bring in no evidence of where I live or work, and not to ask about any prisoner's time or crime. Not asking becomes a way to not know. The next week, when I tell the women about feeling helpless riding the bus around Manhattan wanting to help, they tell me that's the way they feel all the time. At the break, one of the women approaches me. She gets very close to my face and peers at me as if she could see all the way into my shoes and where my feet have been. She asks, "How is the world?" She has the hunger. I know the look. I saw it the first day. All the women have it, and I take it with me every time I get to leave the prison. In The Fire Next Time, James Baldwin returns to the necessity of confronting and recognizing all that disrupts and terrifies us. He says that without risk, there cannot be true giving, and if we cannot look at ourselves, we cannot know what it is to really be equal or to be free in a deeply spiritual and political sense, to be able to love. If we continue to focus on the triumph and uncertainty of the individual without renewing ourselves or allowing failure to teach us, then we will be trapped by the seduction of preference for ease, for heaven, for vacation, for all that says it is good and perfect in our lives, better than you. You and your poverty, your timid silence, taking classes in adult literacy at the library, and your speaking 3 languages besides English, when clearly there is only one that counts. This is a problem. What languages will we speak when we cross over? In silence, I found myself. I stood on the street with a cadre of 100 others at Times Square with the words, "Do not turn our grief into a cry for war," stenciled on a t-shirt on my back. We turned toward the traffic. A crusade of unmitigated cruelty seems to be racing towards all of us at an unimaginable speed. And from the street, honks, waves, middle fingers, and excited, "All right, we are in the world." Perhaps we can learn to love not only by looking at ourselves in our own light, but by looking at ourselves from other times and other places. What time is it in Detroit, in Mosul? What are you wearing, and have you eaten when you hear the sound of planes, buzz of drones, policing helicopters? Who is being policed by whom exactly? Can you see your hand in the dark? Do you have a match? Do you have electricity? For how many hours a day? At night? A lantern? Water? Is the water sweet, or is the water poisoned? And how did that happen? Inside the seismograph, each day a different strata revealed, the relationship of all things turning, by the hour, the minute, the stone taking it all in. It's a long story. I feel my frailties. At the St. Agnes branch of the New York Public Library on September 15th, I'm scheduled to read with poet and translator Marilyn Hacker. We agreed to read other poets from the world. She reads W.H. Auden's 1939, his famous lines, "All I have is a voice to undo the folded lie. We must love one another or die." Today, I read French poet Paul Éluard in 7 poems of love in war, 1943. He furies on and relishes staying human. Shame of unbounded evil, shame of our absurd butchers, always the same lovers of themselves. But we are not ashamed of our suffering. We are not ashamed of our shame. And from the poet Carolyn Forget's haunting collection, The Angel of History, surely art is the result of one's having been in danger, of having gone through an experience all the way to the end. At the St. Agnes reading, homeless people sat in the front row, and some slept. The library held them safe. We gathered afterwards, spoke few words, moved in and out of small clusters. The poems did their work. The language had changed. Words sounded different, and the space between them, across the earth, the words creating a relation to the many sources of language and love. June Jordan to end. Excuse me, June Jordan was a wonderful, I feel like, I can't even say was, we're going to say is, a wonderful poet, essayist, librettist, force, and this is one of her poems. This is what June looks like. It's from a book called Some of Us Who Did Not Die. It's a wonderful book. These poems, they are things that I do in the dark, reaching for you, whoever you are. And are you ready? These words, they are stones in the water, running away. These skeletal lines, they are desperate arms for my longing and love. I am a stranger, learning to worship the strangers around me. Whoever you are, whoever I may become. Thank you. We have Sherry Mitchell next.